What's up, nerds? So, if you're a Potterhead like myself, then Harry Potter is like the best thing since sliced bread. Okay? I love Harry Potter. I love the story, I love the movies, I love the books, I love everything. So, what I'm going to do in this episode is I'm going to rank the movies from worst to best. I know, a little controversial because my opinion is not your opinion, but I just think you should hear me out and you might agree with me on some of the things. So what I'm going to do is now I know that the movies are not the books, but the books do play a part in the movies. You when you read the books, you obviously go, hey, this didn't match up with the book, and maybe certain things didn't meet you what you thought would. It didn't interpret the way you thought it would. But let's get started. We're going to start with number 8, and that is The Half-Blood Prince. Now, the reason that this one got the worst, in my opinion, is because it's the furthest from the book. I mean, there's so much stuff that they didn't put in that I believe was needed. And I think that, they didn't put, like, for instance, the memories of Voldemort. Your hero is only as good as his villain, and I believe that this book slash movie was the one, because of the memories, gave you the most insight to Harry Potter's villain, and they just didn't explore that enough in this movie, and they put a lot of stuff in that they didn't need, in my opinion, that didn't further along the story of the villain or its hero. Another reason that this made the bottom of my list is it left me wanting more. I mean, it didn't. I just like I didn't. It was so, like, for instance, Dumbledore's death, in my opinion, in the book was so heartbreaking, but in this movie, it was such lackluster. I mean, like, I was just, like, completely, like, it was just not good. Like, when Dumbledore died in this movie, I was like, all right, Dumbledore's dead, and I just didn't care. And that's the problem with this movie. It just didn't follow through with my expectations from book to screen. All right, coming in at number 7 was Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. Now, the reason that this one is so further down on the list is because it's not only it's a darker tone, which I liked. I liked the darker tone, but it was a weird tone. It was not a good weird. It was just so weird. Like the world building. Alfonso Cuarón is a good director, but I don't think he did a good job here. I mean, directing wise, yes, but as far as world building, it was just such a weird. It was weird, but it was just not a good weird, in my opinion. And but what I did like about this movie it was a start of a more adult Harry Potter. The first 2 movies were very kiddish, and appropriately so. And this one, they're about 13, so they're starting to get into that, puberty stage and everything. So it was a little bit more getting to that adult stage, and I thought that it was just weird. It was just a weird movie. I mean, the werewolf looked weird. That creature design. The Dementors were pretty cool, but they weren't what I envisioned. But that's fine, Not everything can be what I envisioned. But I did like that they floated and stuff. But it just wasn't. It just wasn't what I thought it would be, and I just didn't think that it was that great. Now, coming in at number 6 is The Order of the Phoenix. Now, this is the first movie that brings in the director David Yates. And in my opinion, the worst director. And it bums me out that he is directing the new series, Fantastic Beasts. I don't like his directing. I don't like the way he does things. I don't like his style. But it's what we're left with. There are some things that I do like, but overall, I just don't like it. The one thing that I don't like, the thing that I liked about the first 2 movies, and about the third and fourth movies is the look of the wizards. If you look at their look, they have such a distinct look that they've got the pointy hats and everything. And then when you get into the 5th movie, they start wearing basically what we wear, suits, but they're just a tiny bit, like, old-fashioned-y. And you do get some wizards that do have a distinct look and everything, but it's not the same throughout the... And he's kept that throughout the entire series. I mean, if you look at Scrimgeour, for instance, he's just wearing a suit. and everything. So I go, how do you tell that he's a wizard? You don't. I mean, like, wizards should have a distinct look, because if you read the books in the first one, they see wizards out and about in the real world, and they can tell that they just don't belong there. Another thing that really I'm sorry, I keep looking at my notes. So another thing that I really didn't like about the Order of the Phoenix is it left me wanting. It left questions that weren't explained. I mean, for instance, when Umbridge gets taken off with the centaurs at the end of this movie, well, towards the end of this movie, we don't get why. I mean, we get the newspaper clippings throughout this one, but we don't get why they take her. And we don't get. I mean, we get a very small thing of like, oh, from Hagrid, oh, the centaurs are angry, but then what? So what? And then they take her, and we don't find out what happens. We never find out what happens to her until she pops up later on in the series during the Deathly Hallows, and you're like, well, what happened to her? I mean, obviously she survived, but we don't know what happened to her, and it's so lazy to not explain these things. All right, coming in at number 5 on my list is Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. And the reason that this falls on the bottom of the list compared to the top of the list, because there's only 8 movies, this movie it's good. Okay, it's childish, but appropriately so. I mean, they're 12 years old in this movie. It's more childrenish than the rest of the series. The first 2 books are more childish compared to the more adult tones of the following movies. So it's appropriately childish, and that's one of the things that I love about it. Another thing that I love about this movie is the basilisk fight. At the end, when Harry's fighting the basilisk is such a cool creature. And that fight at the end, I love that fight. It's so cool. When he pops up out of the water at the end, I was like, yeah, it's so awesome and everything. So I just like it. One thing that I love / don't love, I kind of have a love to hate, is I know we get the cheesiest ending line ever. We get this one.
There's no Hogwarts without you, Hagrid.
And I know it's cheesy, but at the same time, I love it. I just love it. It's so great. So yeah. So, the next one coming in at number 4 was Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. And the reason that this is at the top of the list, but it's at the bottom of the top of the list, is it's the book / movie that started the whole thing. You know, it started off the story, you meet this kid, you kind of get where he's coming from and everything, and it started, so, and again, it's childish like Chamber of Secrets, but appropriately so, because he's 11 years old, and that's a child, and he hasn't hit puberty yet, so he's still, kind of in this weird stage and everything, and, he finds out all this stuff, so, that's why I love the beginnings of stories, because you find out, you begin where this person begins, and we began where Harry began. Another thing that I liked really a lot about this movie was, the transfer from the book to the movie. It did such a good job from beginning to end of bringing out the elements from the book that this movie needed to. And I understand it's because it's a shorter book, but at the same time I don't care if it's a shorter book. They did such a good job of moving it. And one thing that they did that I had mentioned earlier, but I like in this movie, is the look of the wizards and the wizarding world. The wizards, they have long cloaks, they have the pointy hats, and I just love that whole look. I think that this magical world, and it changed later on, but I think that for this movie, it was just so unique and distinct that I looked at it as a positive. All right, so now we are in the final 3, and I am going to pick number 3 is Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2. And the reason that this one didn't get, number 1, the things, it's the end of the whole series, and it's a good movie, but I mean, it didn't meet my expectations, as far as from book to screen, and I understand that it was half of a book, but the thing that for example, the end battle, I envisioned it completely different, and there were things that they changed that I didn't like, but they did some things that I did like, and it was not what I expected. And I think that we got such a build up to this movie. We're like, oh my god, this is the end of it all. Oh my goodness, an end of an era. And and it was so, I was like, well, okay, I guess, it was good. It wasn't as good as I thought it was gonna be. Also, there were certain things that they didn't explain. For instance, the shard of glass that Harry has of the mirror, that in the books, Sirius gives him the mirror. And he breaks it, and he has just the shard left. And the other mirror, Dumbledore has, Albus Dumbledore's brother, has it. And they don't explain that. They say one little tiny line in there to explain it. There, I think it's like, oh, you mean the mirror Sirius gave you? And it doesn't explain it at all. And, if you're a book reader, you got it. But if you're not a book reader, then you're like, what are you talking about? Sirius didn't give him a mirror. And it's so lazy. It's so lazy. And it just makes me go, David Yates started it. He started the fifth one, so he had time to set stuff like that up, and he couldn't sit there and be like, I didn't know. He had to have known. I mean, he talked to J.K. Rowling herself, so that's why it's not within the top two and everything. All right, coming in at number 2 is Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. Now, this is where I started reading the book series. After this book had come out, somebody had told me about the other schools, and I found that very interesting, so I started reading the series, and I loved it. This movie was so good. I mean, the things that I liked about this movie is, one, you did get to meet other schools. You got to meet Beauxbatons, or Beauxbatons, I don't know how you want to say it, and Drumstrang. And I find that you got to get a little chunk of the rest of the Wizarding World, and this was your first, like, kind of, you got a little bit from the other books and everything, but this is the one that you really got a good chunk of it, and you got to see other countries / other schools, and you really got to, get a piece of that. And I found it very interesting, and I loved that about it. And then another thing that I loved the most about this movie / book, the movie and everything, was the Triwizard Tournament. I mean, the Triwizard Tournament is so freaking cool. I mean, the stakes are high, and the reward is great. I mean, it's so good. I mean, from the start of the Triwizard Tournament with that dragon scene is so cool. I mean, and the underwater scene and is pretty cool. The maze scene in the movie was a little bit underwhelming. I expected more. I wanted to see all the creatures. I was looking forward to seeing the Sphinx, and they didn't have it in there. But beggars can't be choosers. Although I wasn't begging, but this movie is just so good, and I just loved it so much. All right, and coming in at number 1, as you guessed it, is Harry Potter's and the Deathly Hallows Part 1. The reason I love this movie so much, I like it more than the rest of them, is because it's like the chase. It's like a chase movie, and I love a good chase movie, and that's what this movie is. They're on the run, they're being hunted down, and they've got to survive. And I love that about this movie. I love it because they have tension inside their tent, and they're trying to run away, and one person leaves and everything, and you just have it's so good. I love that. I just love that whole aspect about it, the whole chasing thing. And the thing about this movie is, I just feel like it's so well put together as a movie, more than the second one. And it's kind of like when you watch Lord of the Rings. If you watch Lord of the Rings and you see the second one, the Two Towers, they had to make the Two Towers before they could make Return of the King. And I feel like the Two Towers is a better movie because they were just like, well, we need to get to the Return of the King, so let's just, kind of put this movie together. And I think Peter Jackson said something along those lines when he made those movies. But I feel the same way. I feel like they had to make this movie to get to the last movie, and because of it, the last movie suffered, and this one benefited greatly, in my opinion. So, in conclusion, tell me what you thought. Did you like my list? Do you have your own? Leave it down below in the comments section. Hit the like button if you like this video. Subscribe if you want to. No need if not, and everything. And I hope you have a great day. Alakazoo!